Instagram is becoming a recommendation-based platform. So if you want to keep on growing on Instagram, you need to make sure you know exactly how Instagram recommendations work. And in this video, I'm going to be covering what recommendations are, why you should care, the recommendation strategy, a few key things to know, the best practices to get a lot more reach through Instagram recommendations, an important thing to keep in mind, and finally, at the end, the recommendation guidelines that you need to abide by to even have a chance to show up in the recommendations. And with that being said, let's get started. So first of all, what are recommendations? Well, according to Instagram,
recommendations are posts in your feed from accounts that you do not follow. The idea is to help you discover new and interesting things on Instagram that you might not know even exist.
And that's nice, but I think the real purpose of recommendations is so Instagram can keep its users in the app more, so they can show more ads, so they can make more money, while the users stay happy, still seeing content from new creators they like and love. But obviously recommendations are making a lot of people unhappy as well.
I'm trying to avoid any sort of contact with the state.
And it's also because they are far from perfecting.
And I want to be clear, we're not there yet.
But recommendations hasn't hit us all of a sudden. Right now we see recommendations in three places. It started out with the Explore tab, which allowed us to find new creators and new content based on what content we engaged with and who we followed. But then recommendations started also to show up in our feed with suggested posts. And now we have Reels, which has its own entire recommendation algorithm. Why should you care? Why can't you just keep on doing the Instagram strategy that's working for you right now? Well, I don't know if you noticed, but if your reach has significantly dropped over the past few weeks, the past few months, there's a reason. Instagram wants to move towards a platform which relies heavily on recommendations. Now, obviously, Instagram, the master thief that steals from all other social media platforms, once again saw TikTok with their amazing algorithm that keeps the users engaged up to 3 times more than it does on Instagram, wanted a piece of that cake. And this is why Reels was born. They got scared of TikTok because it's doing so well, so they copied it. And this means for all of its users that the future of feeds is mainly going to be focused on recommendations. This is why a few weeks ago we actually got that update, which was terrible, let's be honest. And yes, this sucks and it's not necessarily what the people wanted from Instagram, but there is a good side to it. The good side is that Instagram wants to favor small creators again. And I say again, but they never really favored small creators in the first place.
We want to do our best by creators, particularly small creators. And we see recommendations as one of the best ways to help them reach a new audience and grow their following.
So they're hoping to make it easier for the average creator like myself and you to reach a wider audience. I mean, who doesn't like the sound of that? The recommendation strategy. It's not something new, it's been around for a while, but it's becoming an increasingly more important strategy. And it basically consists of creating content that gets suggested in the recommendations, whether that's on the Explore tab, within the Reels, or within the feed posts that are recommended to Instagram users. Unfortunately, we're relying less and less on our actual followers to create engagement for us, but on the people that see our recommendations. So the recommendation strategy is essentially going to become the only way that you'll be able to grow on Instagram. So make sure you pay attention to these next few steps so you can ride the wave early with the recommendation strategy. So here's a few key things to know. First of all, if you want to show up in the recommendations, this one's obvious, you can't be a private account. There are recommendation guidelines that you need to follow for your content to even be considered by Instagram recommendations. But like I mentioned, we'll get to those at the end of the video. First, let's take a look at some of the best practices to get more reach through recommendations on Instagram. First, post original content. This means that for repost pages and theme pages, from now it's going to be a lot tougher for you to grow on Instagram. But I think this is a good thing because there are original creators out there that create some really, really good content. They put a lot of time and effort into it, but Instagram doesn't favor them. I don't know if you remember, but the Explore tab used to only be posts from theme pages. So people that would just find content, repost it, and these would completely outshine the creators because they used to dominate with engagement. Next up, Mosseri, the CEO of Instagram, actually shared a video on his Instagram where he was telling the users to use IG Reels best practices.
Use the Reels best practices.
As organized as Instagram are, he didn't even share the link, which he said he would, in his bio to those best practices. So I had to do a little bit of digging and research, and here's what I found. First, use on-screen text and captions. This makes your content more accessible. Second, inspire yourself from trends. Use trending audio. If there's a specific trend around a specific type of content, try and adapt your niche and content to that. Provide value. I think this is the most important one. Why should someone watch your video? If you're making good content and you like your own content, try showing it to other people and ask them is this good content? Hey, quick intermission. First of all, thanks for watching this far. Second of all, I want to make more content on YouTube, but specifically more content for my audience of you guys. And if you're Instagram creators that are currently making reels, I want to review that content and turn it into a video. So I want to give you feedback specific to your content and also turn it into a video and share it with the rest of the community. If you're up for it, comment down Instagram recommendations or Instagram suggested in the comment section down below. And at the end of that, just let me know your niche and your username, and then I might just review some of your content in the next video. Back to the video. Basically, why should someone stop scrolling and consume your video? Just because you think it's good doesn't mean it is. That's a hard truth that you need to hear more often. Next, bring your authentic touch to it. Be yourself. A lot of people get worried because there's already competition on a platform in their niche, but I think competition is a good thing because it only means what you're doing works, and the way you make it unique to you is just by being you. If someone's interested in a niche, they're not going to follow one creator in that niche. They're going to follow multiple creators whose personality they like. And then an obvious one, but it still needs to be mentioned, you need to be consistent when creating content. Try and post every single day, or as much as you possibly can. Another important thing that the CEO of Instagram mentioned is optimize for search. The context is important. And what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, add a description, this sounds obvious, which is related to your post. Add hashtags, and the CEO himself said,
use hashtags. Don't use 20, use just a couple. No one really wants to see 20 hashtags.
So maybe it's best not to spam 30 hashtags under your posts. And I'm sure even the words in your video, similar to YouTube, are going to be important for Instagram to determine what type of content it is. And the reason everything I've just mentioned is important is because Instagram uses AI to determine what your content is about, what niche it's in, so they can know who they can suggest it to. And this is why being in one specific niche is important. If you're consistently making good content about gardening and you're putting in a description, you're using the right hashtags, you are saying gardening words in your video, and you are showing gardening things in your video, the AI will know that this entire account is about gardening, and so then they know that they can start recommending your content frequently to Instagram users that are interested in gardening. And now, just before we get into the recommendation guidelines, there's one important thing you need to keep in mind about Instagram recommendations. Recommendations right now are a work in progress. Instagram a few weeks ago released that feed and it was a massive failure. The CEO himself said that they haven't got it right yet.
But I also want to be clear, it's not yet good.
But just because they reverted that update, it doesn't mean it's not going to come back. So what you should do is optimize for recommendations early and it will pay off in the long run. People don't like change and they don't like new. And this is why most creators only adopt new things when they have to. Big creators jump on new features, on new platforms, on new trends early on. And that's why they're big creators. This is exactly what happened with TikTok. It got hated on so much, and now it's probably one of the best platforms to grow on as a new creator. And if you think about it, just like with Reels as well. When Instagram Reels first came out, I don't know if you remember, but it was so easy to get Reels. That's why I was pushing it so hard. Please start using Instagram Reels. I highly suggest you get creating Reels. You should start posting Instagram Reels if you want to grow. Now, it's not as easy to grow because Reels has almost become the standard type of content on Instagram. Everyone's making Reels. And now let's deep dive into the recommendation guidelines. And this is a little bit more of a boring part, but it's a very important part because if you don't follow these guidelines, your content will never show up in the recommendations. Okay, so as you can see here, these guidelines are going to help us determine what content and accounts they avoid recommending on the platform. So the first one is content that impedes our ability to foster a safe community. So basically it's anything that's about self-harm, about violence, that may be sexually explicit, content that promotes drugs or alcohol, tobacco. And then the fifth one, content shared by any non-recommendable account. This is basically all of the rules that apply to individual content that also apply to accounts as a whole, and there's also a few extra ones. Next up, we've got sensitive or low quality content about health or finance. First of all, I just want to pay attention to this low quality part. Low quality content is not as often going to get recommended as high quality content. But it's basically, as you can see, content that promotes cosmetic procedures, content exaggerating health claims like miracle cures, content attempting to sell products or services based on health claims, and then risk-free investments like,
oh yeah, invest in my crypto, bro, I swear it's gonna go to the moon.
Content that also isn't recommendable is content that users actually dislike, clickbait content that includes engagement bait, and content that promotes contests or giveaways. Again, Instagram is most likely just going to use AI to determine what the type of content is. So maybe don't make every single one of your posts a giveaway. And clickbait and engagement bait are basically only bad things when your content sucks, right? Or if you're just playing up line. So make good quality content and you'll easily not have to worry about these things. Next, and this one's an important one, content that is associated with low quality publishing, such as unoriginal content that is largely repurposed from another source. And this is why you need to create your own original content. Content from websites that get a disproportionate number of clicks from Instagram Instagram versus other places on the web, and I'm pretty sure this is regarding fake news and to stop the rapid spread of fake news on the platform. And then finally, news content that doesn't include transparent information about authorship or the publisher's editorial staff. And then next up, we've got false or misleading content. This one's where we actually see the fact checkers on Instagram. So when you're making crazy claims or sharing some random facts, or when you share a meme fact, sometimes it gets fact checked. And if you're making some crazy claims as a joke, it is possible that won't get recommended. And then basically all of this is just misinformation. And now we've got account recommendations. And this is basically all of the rules that apply to individual content. And there's also a few extra ones here. For example, first of all, an account that's recently violated Instagram's community guidelines. And this is why it's always good to follow Instagram's community guidelines, as well as these recommended guidelines, to show up in the recommendations. And then if you've shared content that they try not to recommend, so this is basically content with any of the points that we've shared just before, repeatedly reposted vaccine misinformation, repeatedly engaged in misleading practices to build followings. So this is using any third-party service or buying likes, buying followers. You'll never get recommended if you've been banned from running ads on the platform, if you've posted false information, if you're associated with any movement or organization offline tied to violence. Oh man, my light's just... And then finally, the last one, if you discuss or depict suicide and self-harm anywhere on your accounts, the account name, the account description, the posts, the caption, the bio, anywhere. And that is the recommendation guidelines. And if you follow everything I've just mentioned, it's likely that your content will get recommended. But even if you do, it doesn't guarantee it. You need to create good quality content. You can watch this video to know how. And if it's not there yet, I haven't made it yet, subscribe. Thanks for watching.